We're delighted to say that this series of Qtr Time podcasts is supported by Carbon Jacked, an environmental startup that helps you combat climate change.
They're an awesome company that provide monthly memberships which plant trees, support epic climate projects, and help you to reduce your carbon footprint.
Memberships start from just £2.50 per month, so you can help save the planet for less than a cup of coffee.
Signing up is super easy. Go to carbonjack.com and enter NetballPod for a huge 30% off. The link is in our show notes. Go check it out.
Hello and welcome to Qtr Time podcast in partnership with Carbon Jacked. I'm Lucy G.
And I'm Lucy P. And we're here to bring you all the netball goodness you never knew you needed. Hi everyone, welcome to episode 1 of season 2 of Qtr Time podcast. Hooray! It's fantastic to be back for another year covering the Vitality Netball Superleague and all things netball. Big thank you to our awesome partners Carbon Jacked for supporting us this year. We have already released 2 episodes this year from our Quad Series mini-series, so make sure you check those out if you haven't already, and do let us know what you thought of the interviews with Dorette, Nolene, Jess and Stacey. Now, back to today's episode. The opening weekend of the season is just a few days away and we absolutely cannot wait. I am so excited for this. I don't even know what to do with myself. I'm tippy-tapping all over the place.
Mate,
yeah, literally. So Lucy G, what's coming up on the show today?
Okay, so first up, we're going to discuss the news that 3 of the Super League matches will be streamed live each week and what this means for the league and the development of netball. We'll be taking a look at the pros and cons of the updated TV deal with Sky Sports. Then we'll quickly run the rule over each team based on how they're tracking from pre-season and any key injury updates. Then we'll be moving on to our special topic for today, which is all around imports in the VNSL. We'll be chatting with Sarah Gandon, the Player Development Manager from the Netball Players Association, and South African international Shadine van der Merwe, formerly of Surrey Storm and Adelaide Thunderbirds and SSN, and now, of course, Manchester Thunder. We think it's super important to shed light on this topic, particularly in light of the Telegraph article released last summer that detailed the visa struggles for our UK imports. Super interesting.
Amazing. Okay, so let's dive straight in and take a look at the new details for the Super League broadcast in 2022. So for starters, it's a massive step forward from pre-pandemic with, as lots of people were saying, triple the number of games being broadcast live. Monday Night Netball is now an official thing, which is amazing. Apart from my train on Monday is a bit annoying, Yeah, annoying. But 2 further matches will also be streamed on YouTube at the weekend, meaning they are accessible to all. We'll also get, this is a new thing as well, these highlight packages, and all the games from the season opener, the Easter weekend double headers will be streamed on Sky Sports and YouTube. The other good news is that fans will be able to watch in person and teams will once again be able to feel the benefit of that home and away fixture without all the travel involved like they had last season. So that's all the good bits. Luce, what are the not so good bits?
Yeah, I mean, lots of good bits, but the not so good stuff, unfortunately, that does mean that 2 games a week aren't going to be shown at all. We will just have the 3-minute highlight package. And this is obviously down from last season where we saw absolutely everything. We were spoiled rotten last season. The netball family definitely want more. You know, we really were spoilt last year with all 110 matches plus the finals last year. Also, the Monday night game is only available to Sky viewers, we think. I don't think that one's going to be on YouTube. So they do clearly want to push people towards buying a subscription, understandably, but it does make it ever so slightly less accessible for those who can't afford it. On the whole, though, I think we have to acknowledge it is a really positive step forward compared to pre-pandemic, and there is so much for us to be excited about this season.
Yeah, I think it's really the best of both worlds for now, and we're obviously still pushing forward and seeing what options could be there, but the appetite's clearly there from people wanting to watch it, so hopefully it will just be a matter of time until we get all the games, 24-hour news coverage, full, exclusive interviews every day, non-stop.
24-hour netball news. I love it. That would be incredible, though. Could you imagine it covered all the major leagues?
They have that for the NFL. They have it.
Yeah, we need it. I think as well, it's important to also recognise the likes of BBC, who are starting to really up their game when it comes to netball. We saw them have coverage over the Quad Series. They're going to be doing coverage at Com Games. So who knows? This could be the start of something really, really great. And although it's good to be grateful and to acknowledge the progress that we're making, women's sport on the whole do need to, I think, stop being so grateful and so apologetic for wanting more. And actually, we do need to stand up and say, you know, this is good, but it's still not enough. So let's see what happens next year and the year after.
Yeah, there was a really interesting article about that, actually, referencing New Zealand women's rugby team. And I think that we're not going to get the best until we demand the best. So keep pushing.
Yeah, love it. So moving on to our season previews, we're going to take a quick look at each team, starting with Celtic Dragons. We won't go into a super amount of detail with these, as we covered quite a lot of the key transfers in our sign-in window episode before Christmas. So if you haven't, definitely take a listen to that. We had 3 really amazing interviews and it was really, really fascinating. So first up, Celtic Dragons. Obviously, they've got a new coach, pretty much a new team. They've got a new brand. It's really exciting time for them. They finished in 10th place at the Rise Again pre-season festival. So possibly not the results they're hoping for early doors, but their lineup, to be fair, may take a little while to settle because it is so new and so fresh.
Yeah, definitely. Next up, Surrey Storm. Obviously, the signing of Proskovia Peace, huge bonus for them. But the question, I think, will be around feeding her. I am expecting Storm to finish in a similar place to last year because of this. And also their defence. I don't know if they have the firepower of some of the other defences in the league, and they were quite heavily penalised last year.
Okay, moving on to 7 Stars. Now, they caused a bit of a ruckus in pre-season with the signing of Qtr Time. They've obviously got a lot of Kiwi firepower now, with Kat combining with Leota. But again, I don't know if they necessarily have enough in the defensive end. It was great to see Summer Artman make the move to Stars, and hopefully she'll be able to get more court time. But because she didn't get a lot last year, it might take her a little while to find her flow. So I don't know if they're going to have everything that they need in that defensive end for this season. And I have to say as well, my thoughts and prayers go out to whoever plays wing, attack and centre, having to be on super high alert for the Tuiviti genius.
Yeah. Next up, London Pulse. Obviously really devastated to see that injury to Hallie Adio before the season, and she's having surgery, unfortunately, so she'll be out for a while. But on the flip side, the Aussie imports were looking very strong at the Rise Again Festival, and we've also got Alicia Scholes elevated to the squad, who apparently ran really well in the warm-up match against the men's team not long ago.
Yeah, really excited to see what she can bring, actually. Next up, we have Wasp Netball. I'm not going to lie, I am a little bit worried about Wasps. I do think they're going to struggle again this season, potentially even worse than what they did last season. I understand the logic and the thought process behind Mel's recruitment and wanting to have more local athletes so there's less demands on travel and she's able to see them more. But I don't know if they have the spark or the firepower that they need to make an impact this season. So more than happy to be surprised. Please do surprise me, Wasps, but I do have concerns.
Yeah. Next on to Strathclyde Sirens. So I'm calling it early, top 4 finish. Absolutely. Ooh. I'm expecting really big things from Sirens this year. They had such a good season last year. I think that they've retained a lot of their players and they've got the momentum. So yeah, absolutely calling it. They're the one team that I feel confident will finish higher than they did last year.
Oh, nice. I like that. And they have got some great looking new dresses this season as well.
Yeah, I love it. Oh,
mate, they look incredible. Yeah, really excited to see them. Next up, we've got Saracens Mavericks. Saracens, how do I say it? They're the team that make me sigh. They really made me sigh a lot last season. And I'm really hoping that they're able to improve upon that this season. Jamila McCarthy was really fab in pre-season. I just don't know if they're going to be able to show that consistency that they seem to be lacking year on year.
Yeah. Next, Rhinos. I think Rhinos will be up there, but clearly missing Danelle Wallum and Dan Ryan this year. Berger has been injured, only featured in 2 tests for South Africa. Clinton and Rushton were also out in pre-season and for Fast Five, so they did really struggle at that event. And also they've got limited time to get that front line settled after all these injuries and a brand new coach. So excited to see what she brings, but not predicting that Rhinos will be in the top 4 this year.
No, I agree. I think they might sort of slip down to maybe 5th or 6th. But yeah, I mean, the coach is a complete unknown to a lot of us. So really, really excited to see what Tracy can bring. Next up, it is Manchester Thunder. They are looking scary good. And I'm going to call it now. You've called something. I'm calling it. These are going to be your grand finalists, I reckon. Yeah. I think it's going to be a Thunder Bath final. Sorry, Lightning.
Really? Not Lightning?
No, because although Lightning have kept majority the same squad, they're missing Sarah Bayman, and I don't think you can underestimate how crucial she is to that setup, in my opinion. Not to take anything away from Victoria Burgess, but I think that they're going to miss her. So yeah, and with the addition of Pumsa Mawani, calling it Bath.
Yeah, you might be right on that one. Dunno. Next up, Team Bath. Also looking very spicy with the addition of Pumsa Mawani, as you said, who was that late signing, who everyone was wondering, who's it going to be? Oh, it's Pumsa Mawani. Amazing. Yeah, a really stellar squad from them this year. I wonder actually if we'll see SDL at Wing A with Creek in GA, if they're maybe thinking about her as a potential Roses option there. Obviously, we know she combines really well with Borgia, but Mavericks did figure that out last year, and it may be that other teams have figured that out. So Creek might be what they need to mix things up in that attack end.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be mad with SDL wing attack at all. I actually love her there. And yeah, I think that'll do wonders for her Roses prospects as well. Lastly, it is our 2021 Super League champions, Loughborough Lightning. We've got another new coach, obviously, as we mentioned earlier, with Sarah Francis Bayman taking some time out. So massive hats off to her for being able to recognise from a wellbeing perspective that was something that she needed. And I think the support that she got from the netball family was absolutely phenomenal. Burgess, it definitely is a bit of an unknown, so don't really know what to expect. Unless you're in and around that camp, you probably know her really well. But externally, I think a lot of the netball family are sort of in the dark. The lineup is very similar, so I think we can definitely expect to see them in the top 4, if not the finals. I mean, definitely still up there, but I don't know if they'll quite get there this year.
Yeah, with you. Amazing. Well, we have a jam-packed doubleheader coming up for this opening weekend. What are your predictions for the Saturday wins, Luce?
Okay, so first up, Lightning versus Pulse. I'm going for a Lightning win, but Pulse to be within 10, 15 maybe. Then we've got Bath versus Sirens. I've gone for a Bath win, but they're going to be neck and neck for the first half, and Bath are going to pull away in the second. Thunder and Dragons, I've gone for Thunder with relative ease. No shade to Dragons. Next up, we've got Wasps versus Mavericks, and I've gone for Mavericks, and I think they're going to have that famous championship quarter, pull away in the third. And then lastly, it's Storm versus Stars, and I'm going to go for Storm with thanks to Proscovia Peace. I think she's going to pull it out the bag for them, but Stars are going to be within 10.
Interesting.
What about you for the Sunday, Luce?
So first up, Rhinos versus Lightning. I think Lightning will win, but after a shaky start. Wasps versus Sirens. Sirens win by 8 is my prediction.
Nice.
I'm backing Sirens all the way this year. I really hope they don't disappoint me. But the trouble is, when I predict somebody, it never happens. So I'm really sorry, Sirens, because that's probably a really bad juju. Pulse versus Bath. I think Bath will start strong and then keep a good lead. Dragons versus Mavericks. Mavericks win, but the final quarter is a draw.
Ooh, I love how specific you're being.
It's like in Harry Potter when they say Bulgaria will win, but Ireland will get the snitch.
Oh, yeah.
In that one. And finally, Stars Thunder. I'm predicting a 10-goal win for Thunder.
Okay. I would have probably gone for more than that. Sorry, Stars, but very interesting to see which one of us, if any, are correct. Coming up after the break, we chat to Sarah Gandon from the Netball Players Association all about imports in the Vitality Netball Superleague.
Do you want to help combat climate change? Well, you can by joining Carbon Jacked. We're both members and we love it.
Memberships start from £2.50 and your money goes towards amazing projects, from planting trees in the Peak District to providing refugees with sustainable solar cookers. You can get a huge 30% off by entering Netball Pod when you sign up at carbonjack.com.
Carbon Jacked also do loads of great work with businesses, so get in touch if your company wants to become more sustainable. All the info you need is in the show notes, so make sure you take a look.
It is absolutely our pleasure to be joined by the Player Development Manager for the Netball Players Association, Sarah Gandon. Sarah, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you two?
Good, very excited. Really looking forward to the start of the Super League this weekend.
Yes, us too. We cannot wait. Liz and I, who work at the NPA, are full-on netball geeks, so we will be attached to every game.
Yeah, it's a pretty intense weekend, isn't it? But I mean, in my opinion, you can never have too much netball, so bring it on, I say.
No, same.
Amazing. So let's dive right in. Sarah, can you share with us briefly, for the benefit of our listeners, what the role of the NPA is and what you do there?
Okay, so the role of the NPA is to be a voice for the players. That can be so many things. So we're representative of the players, potentially in conversations around their national programme or maybe around the Super League. And by having everybody as a member, we can give an accurate voice. So some examples might be, before the season last year, we surveyed all the members to say, how do you feel about going back to netball during COVID? And what does that look like? And what does it mean for you? Because we've got lots of dual career athletes who are working as well as playing netball. The other things that we do as the NPA around supporting players and developing them off the court. So we run some mentoring programs with other companies. We help them with career advice. We might do some sessions on how to improve your LinkedIn profile or how to become an influencer on Instagram or TikTok, or, we're just trying to build better people and help them become better people alongside their netball career. We are a union. We have union activities where if an athlete had a dispute with a club or with their country, then we would be there to support them and help them through that. But we're also there for some of the nicer stuff that's not quite so conflicty. We're new, we're building, and we're changing all the time based on the needs of the players.
Amazing. I just think it's so important to have some kind of setup like this. And even when something as simple as players are on fair contracts and standardized contracts and making sure that everyone's sort of getting the most they can out of the league, I think it's so important and is a massive step forward to the professionalization of our sport as well. So Sarah, as you'll know, we've been wanting to do this particular episode for a very long time, particularly since that article that you shared with us from the Telegraph titled "Elite Foreign Players Blocked from Earning a Living Wage" by Fiona Thomas, which we'll come back to in some detail later on. So a massive thank you for your time. Before we dive into some questions, we thought it'd be useful for our listeners if we recapped on everything that we know regarding imports and signings in the Super League. So Luce, what do we know so far?
So we know that clubs can sign a maximum of 15 players during the signing window, 12 contracted players and up to 3 training partners. Squads are made up of mainly UK athletes, but each side is also allowed to register 2 non-UK players. However, these players cannot play in the same third of the court at the same time in any game. New rules this year see clubs having to submit 10 players who sit within the salary cap. In 2021, you had 9 players who came under the salary cap of £70,000 and 1 player who is a marquee player who sits outside of this. For 2022, 10 players are within the cap and you can have 2 marquee players. And the good news is the salary cap has increased by 29%, which, if my maths is correct, makes a total of £90,300. £9,030 if split equally 10 ways. And finally, the salary collar, which is the minimum amount that teams can pay, has also been increased by 10%. The minimum individual salary for a player has gone up by 20% from 2021. So all really positive news.
Amazing. So although we saw these new rules and financial implications introduced in 2021, which is a real positive move for the league, the stark reality is that it still just isn't enough. And we're I would say we're a long way off the likes of Suncorp Super Netball, who are able to pay their athletes to be full-time athletes. In the Super League, unless you're in the Roses programme, I believe, you'll likely have to supplement your Super League income with a second job. And therefore, the majority of our athletes are also holding down full-time jobs alongside training and trying to replicate, as best they can, a professional athlete training schedule with a fraction of the time, the money and the resources. However, for our imports, this is even more difficult. So Sarah, for anyone who hasn't seen it, can you talk us through what that article by Fiona Thomas told us about the difficulties of being an import in the Super League?
Yeah, so Fiona and I had really good conversations before that article around the challenges that import players have. They're very multifaceted. There are some around finances, but there's also some around leaving your family behind and coming here to pursue your netball career, whether that's your partner or your children. And that can be emotionally challenging for players. There's also the change around culture. So the imports that come over here are from loads of different countries. So the cultures that they bring to our league bring huge benefits to our league, but it means that some of our clubs are having to learn their new cultures, but also the players coming in have to learn a new culture. And often import players are put together in houses and they might not necessarily be from the same culture and the same background. It doesn't mean they don't get on, it just means that there can be some challenges. But I guess one of the main challenges that was highlighted in Fiona's article was around the restriction on being able to work. So an import player who comes over here to play will train as much as any of the other athletes in a Super League squad, but a lot of the other athletes in the Super League squad have a full-time job. So that then means that the training is usually early morning, evening, and it leaves imports with the day to fill that they're not allowed to get work that isn't related to being a professional netballer. And I'm sure you'll understand that trying to get a job as a professional netballer in and amongst the community is quite difficult. So they can sometimes do kind of player appearances or master classes and things, but they can't go and get a job in an office where they can meet other people and do a part-time job or a role because their restrictions under their visa mean that they can't do that. And the reason we wanted to highlight it through the Telegraph, and we've also spoken to DCMS about it, is that we felt that women's sport probably are in a much more tricky situation in this instance because the salaries are so much lower that then you don't have the disposable income to spend in the day. So yeah, I think that's where there's a struggle, and we have been trying to work with our import members to understand what they find as a struggle and what they find difficult, so that we can also go back to clubs and give some best practice advice on, look, when you've got players arriving from an African nation, you may need to bring a coat to the airport. You know, they normally arrive December, January. It might be the first time they've ever felt this type of cold. If they're new to the league, when they arrive, it's a really positive thing to buddy them up with someone, and it might even buddy them up with someone who's not in the team. You know, you might do both. You might buddy them up with someone in the team and then buddy them up with, there's so many netball volunteers out there that would just love to help. I mean, I probably put myself in that position as well. You know, if someone came to my hometown and needed someone to show them where the local supermarket was and just show them around a little bit and welcome them to your area, then it's things like that that can make a real difference to a player and make them feel at home and welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that article, in all honesty, blew my mind. Like I knew to an extent there must be difficulties and it must be sort of hard to settle. When I read that, I was really quite shocked. So what we kind of took from this is that, like you say, it's really multifaceted, but we kind of feel that the issue is twofold. In an ideal world, England Netball would be able to raise the salary cap massively and support clubs to be really financially stable and to generate tons and tons of income so they can pay their players, you know, huge amounts of money. That would be lovely. But really, like you say, we also need the Home Office to amend or lower the restriction on imports so that they have the ability to be able to support themselves. Because one fact from that article was that a foreign athlete must earn at least £35,800 to be eligible to apply for a settlement in the UK. So if we bring that back to the Super League, if you were going to pay an import player that from your just over 90 grand salary cap, that's 39% of it gone on one player. Like, that's just not a reality.
No, and like you say, it's not that the clubs wouldn't want to pay an athlete that amount of money. Like, would be a good salary. It would be a nice salary for someone to live on. And bearing in mind, an import comes over because they are one of the best. They're not coming over for another reason. They're coming over because they are one of the best from their country. So we're talking about top athletes who bring a huge amount to our league. But if we can't afford to pay them just under 40 grand, then they can't stay beyond their contract. And that then means that as soon as they retire from netball, they go back to their country, and actually maybe they have managed to build a life here. Maybe they do have a relationship, or maybe they've found work, or, you know, they might find that they want to stay because they've enjoyed living here, and that's really taken away by that restriction.
Yeah, 100%. And like it said with Mary Trollock in particular, you know, she relies on this income she sends it back to her family in Uganda to support them. So actually, she's come over here to build a better life for herself and to provide opportunities for her family. But the restrictions just make it so difficult for her. And if we stick on the finances topic, there was a 2018 Statista report that said that women's sport receive only 0.4% of total sport sponsorships. But with the increase in viewership and exposure of women's sports in general, it seems like this could be a potential option for athletes to try and obtain additional income while still helping to grow the visibility of the sport. So do you think it could be that we actually need to encourage more netballers to try and obtain sport sponsorships as an additional way of boosting their income? I'm sort of thinking of the likes of Helen Housby with Nike and Red Bull.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also understanding their value, and there's a huge education piece to be done with our players on the value that they have, because there are a number of companies who want to have a space in female sport, want to be seen to be part of women's sport, but don't actually give the finances that they would give to a similar athlete in a male sport. So the amount of players that we have who are offered value in kind, you know, a gift of kit type thing, it's nice that they get a gift of kit, but equally, that's not going to help them financially. We're just trying to educate the players to make sure that they're not giving up too much of their influence to companies without really receiving anything back. So realistically, what we're talking about here is trying to make them able to sustain themselves as a full-time athlete without having to do as much of a career type job. And lots of our players do still want to have careers, but they do want a bit of flexibility around not having to do full time. So maybe doing 3 days a week in a job, still having a career, but yeah, a sponsorship deal that actually gave them some cash value rather than just value in kind could be one of the ways that you could look at doing that. And especially for our imports, that would be really key.
Yeah, definitely. We've seen as well in the SSN a small number of contractual league breaches, with recently the Queensland Firebirds being the latest, as they included an additional services agreement as part of their letters of offer to several players. No idea what that means, but we'll go with it. So this got us thinking, what is the norm for clubs to offer imports in the VNSL over and above their salary? And are there any restrictions on what clubs can't provide?
Yeah, so what they can provide is they can provide university scholarships or pay university fees. However, those need to be included within the salary cap. They also can provide accommodation, but again, that needs to be included in the salary cap. So those are the type of things that can be included, but they can also include things like kit, which you would hope that everybody would get their kit. They must provide medical insurance for everybody that is coming to the league. So that's not included in the salary cap, but it would be almost seen as an extra service benefit that you get. Fortunately, since the NPA came into existence, we have pushed to make sure that insurance is required and is mandatory for every player in the league, because previously it wasn't. And again, it wasn't that clubs didn't want to look after players. They just maybe found that by not insuring their players, they were able to pay for anybody who was injured. But our fear was, when you then get to a point where you've maybe had a few injuries in a row, is there a point where you can't pay? So contractually now, the clubs do need to pay for insurance, and anything that isn't covered in insurance would get topped up. So what else can they offer? I mean, they offer the use of their gyms. Sometimes they'll offer use of other gyms, so that if a player lives in a different area, they might offer them that they would either pay for their gym membership, or they might offer to pay some of their expenses that would cover them to get in and out of training. But again, the expenses in and out of training need to be within the salary cap, and expenses to and from matches are not in the salary cap. So unfortunately, it is a confusing answer to what sounds like a simple question.
Yeah, that is wild that all of that's included in the salary cap. I didn't realize that at all. That's crazy. And in terms of, could a club offer like a car to a player, or would that also have to come under the salary cap?
Yeah, no, that can be separate to the salary cap, and that would be used for their travel. I know that, for example, there's a Sirens car, so the Sirens players can use it. They would use that for getting to and from training, but also player appearances and doing some work for the Sirens. So that is a franchise that I know do that, and that wouldn't be taken out of that salary cap.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And it's what's really struck me from what you've been saying is how reliant the imports are on their clubs. I know it sounds ridiculous, but if you think people have often come to the UK, they might be here for the first time, and they're literally reliant on everything. And it's all got to come under just that tiny, narrow salary cap. It's crazy. And one other thing I've also wondered is how clubs, by and large, split the salary cap of the 10 contracted non-marquee players. So are you able to give us any insight on how, generally speaking, clubs allocate this? Are the imports usually the marquee players?
Yeah, so as the NPA, we don't get direct data on how this works. But what we do get is the data from our members to help us get an idea of this. In general, we would say that the marquee players are often the imports, because they come with so many other financial obligations for the club. Then the likelihood would be that a club would maybe have 3 players who would be their key players. And any of you that follow any teams would be able to probably rhyme off those 3 key players that you pick the rest of your squad around. And generally, they might be in 3 different court areas. So a defender, a midi, and a shooter, depending on the club that you have. So we would suggest that those 3 players are probably on the higher end of a salary. So they would sit above that kind of average that you talked about if you split the cap evenly. Then you would have the rest of your starting 7 a little bit below them. And then you'd probably have players who can come off the bench and make impact. And then you would maybe have the newbies or the youngsters that are just coming through, who might sit around the lower end of the salary. So there is a minimum salary that a club can pay, and those players would probably sit around that minimum in their first couple of seasons, or if they're just developing. We would hope that as time goes on and as they're making their way into squads, that they move up those levels. So when you guys were talking about the salary cap being 90,000, and that being, if it was split equally, would be 9,000 a player, there are variations on that. So it is much more that some would sit at the lower end of around 3,000, and then some would be a bit higher up.
Yeah, I suppose it makes sense. And that was always my assumption, that is how it was split. There'd be like a top, middle and bottom tier, if you want to phrase it crudely. And I suppose you have to, there's an element of rewarding players for loyalty, for staying at a club for however many years. So there's so many things to consider, but it is wild to think that, there are some athletes in our top flight domestic competition who might only be earning £3,000 a year for playing in it. Like that probably doesn't even cover travel expenses for some players. So it does blow my mind a little bit. There's another rule within the Super League that I think raises a lot of questions. That's around imports not being able to play in the same third of the court as each other. So for that reason, we often see imports playing in the shooting and the defensive thirds, almost as if like there's a reduced likelihood that the clubs could break these rules by accident. Only 4 out of the 22 total imports in the Super League this year play in the mid-court. So do you have any insight into this particular league rule and why it's set up that imports can't play in the same third as each other?
So the likelihood is that it's around making sure that we're still exposing our English, Welsh, Scottish, Northern Irish players. So if we said that it didn't matter and then we got 2 shooters in every club, then all of a sudden we've got no shooters coming through the system. And that would probably give you a good insight into why the Australian national squad is starting to see some challenges, because when you make imports uncapped, you don't have a restriction on how many, they're much more likely to come in at either end, because actually you'll find at your local netball club there's always a load of middies, isn't there? Like finding a good shooter and a good keeper is a lot harder than finding a good mid-quarter. So it's no different in elite netball, and especially not in this country. We bring through some amazing talent in the mid-court, the never-ending debate about how many wing defences England have, and how you have to shift them into different positions to make sure that you have the best players on the court is probably really key. But yeah, and that would be why they would make sure that they were split across different areas, just not to restrict the exposure of players here.
Yeah, that makes sense. Actually, there was a quote from Lisa Alexander that we saw where she said that our high performance system is working for another country. And I think that was after the 2018 Com Games medal win. So you can understand why those restrictions are in place, actually. So finally, Sarah, we know that the NPA are doing incredible work to help grow and progress and professionalise our game. So what is next for the NPA? What are you working towards within the professionalisation of the sport?
So we're working really closely with England Netball and the clubs on professionalising the sport. We genuinely believe everybody within this sport wants it to go in the same direction. And what we want to do is make sure that the route that's taken is done with the players in mind, because without the players, the game can't progress. And that's not to say the players are the only people in that jigsaw, but they are an important voice. And they are the end product that is seen and that is sold. So really we're working together with England Netball, with the clubs, and also building ourselves as a company and a brand. So we are having to go out to look for partnerships and sponsorships for ourselves as a brand, but also trying to link that with players as well. So we might have a conversation with a company, and if they wanted to have access to players, we would want to make sure that we're offering some really good incentives for our players to get involved with that. If we go out looking for sponsorship, it can't all come into the NPA as the company, because we are about the players, and the players are our members, and they're the ones that we're there to service and look after. And if we make them more sustainable as athletes and give them the opportunity to move towards professionalisation, we have to go along with them and be there to support them. So that's probably our main focus all the time. So yeah, just along the way, we will always make sure that our athletes are looked after, and that can pretty much mean anything. Liz and I, who work for the NPA, we don't sit down at our desk at 9 and leave at 5 and that's our day done. We're both very flexible. We love what we do. We get on so well with all the members. They are grateful for what we do, but they give us so much job satisfaction. I can't tell you how empowering it is to work with athletes and feel like you've made a difference to their lives. And that is all we want to do. And we want to make sure that moving forward, everybody that plays in the Super League and everyone that plays in a national squad in the UK is a member of the NPA, because we are genuinely here for every single one of them. At the moment, not everybody's a member, but we want you all to be. We want everybody to be a member. We're doing great work at the moment, but we want everybody to be involved.
Amazing. I mean, I think that's just absolutely fantastic, and what a positive note to end on as well. Sarah, you've been wonderful to have on the pod. Thank you so much for giving us your time, and enjoy the Super League this weekend.
I will. Thank you so much.
Next up, we hear from Shadine van der Merwe about her experience of being in the UK and Australia as an import player.
So it is our absolute pleasure to be joined by South African international and the new sign-in for Manchester Thunder. It's Shadine van der Merwe. How are you doing, Shadine?
Hi guys, no, I'm doing very well. Still getting used to this weather, but no, I'm settling in quite good.
Amazing. Well, no doubt you've been training hard ahead of the Super League starting this weekend. How's the vibe in the camp?
It's wonderful. I mean, it's crazy to think it's actually happening this weekend. Just the other day was still a month ago, and now we only are in single digits. So it's crazy to think like the season is starting this weekend, but very exciting.
Yeah, we have that exact same conversation on a daily basis, don't we, Liz? Oh my God, I can't believe it started this weekend. So yeah, definitely feel you on that one. Okay, so we'll just dive straight into our questions for you. Something that we discovered through our chat with Sarah from the Netball Players Association earlier, and this article that was released last year around imports in the Super League, is that import players are often limited in their options to top up their earnings with secondary employment and are unable to exceed 20 hours of additional work a week. They're also restricted to work that relates specifically to the visa category of elite sports person, which basically means that anything that's not netball related is kind of out of the question. So a question for you, if you had the option of doing a secondary non-netball specific job to kind of top up your VNSL salary, would you take it? And what kind of job would you do?
I think definitely if there's an opportunity like that, I will take it, seeing that like we're only training at night. So during the whole day, like you do have time to actually do that. And it's also extra earnings. And especially going back to South Africa, it helps a lot. But yeah, so I do have my degree in teaching. But it's just like unfortunate with my visa, I'm only allowed to do what I'm allowed to do. So, but yeah, definitely if that's an option, I would do it.
Oh, I had no idea that you were a teacher. What age group do you teach?
Well, it's actually like secondary. Well, we call it grade. So from grade 10 till 12. I basically just studied it to play netball for the university. Because back home, netball at the university is quite big and I had a scholarship. So I just play netball and studied it alongside. But at least I did get my degree in education and also did my master's as well.
Amazing. Oh, that's really interesting. I had no idea. I feel like I know you a little bit better now.
And I guess that's really interesting as well, because lots of netball players have to think about what they might do after their career. So it's really cool that you've got that kind of extra string to your bow, as well as being obviously an amazing world-class athlete. We know you've had the opportunity to play in the VNSL previously, but also over in Suncorp Super Netball, which is commonly described, mostly by them, as the best league in the world. So can you talk us through the differences in your experiences as an import between the UK and being over in Australia?
I think in Australia it's a bit more professional, like you can do it like full time. There's a lot of university students that still like do their studies and so on, but most players is like full time netball athlete, and you do spend more time during the day to train and practice and going to gym, and you have to do like extra stuff like go for a massage during the day.
Sounds very challenging. Yeah.
And do like Pilates and stuff like that. So they try to and do like a lot of appearances during the day as well. I know there's a lot of students that juggle uni work as well, but mostly because you're a full-time netball athlete, they try to get the hours in, and obviously you have to prioritize around your netball. So they do want you to put your netball first.
And did you find that kind of quite demanding, that sort of full-on lifestyle?
Actually not, because for an import, we do have that advantages of like, okay, you go overseas and just play netball, and that's basically my job. And also with our visa, we're not having that opportunity to have that secondary job. You just do netball. So you have a lot of time in your hands. And because we like do coaching and stuff like that, it all needs to be going through the franchise. Otherwise, like with your visa, it's not acceptable. But no, so definitely with import, it's easier because like you just go there, you have a lot of time. So you just do netball and have fun.
Yeah, no, it sounds brilliant. In a recent interview with Sky Sports, you announced your return to the UK Netball Super League. You've said this: making the decision to come back to the Vitality Netball Super League was to help myself to build up confidence. So can you tell us a little bit more about this and how Manchester Thunder have supported you on your return?
Yes, definitely. And I know I'm excited going to a team environment that has that winning culture. And it's a good team family culture as well. And just looking forward and being like competitive. And it gives me the opportunity as well to train with some of the best players in the world. And especially like if I have to go in a wing defense position, I can train against Natalie. Thank goodness she's my teammate this year. Well, just for the season, I'm very excited about that. But then again as well, there's so many good players. You get the opportunity to gain experience as well. And I think for myself personally, I like learning a lot. So you don't want to get to a stage where your netball becomes like a plateau, like you just get stagnant and stuff like that, where I feel I still have a lot of netball in me. So for me, gaining that experience and also being in this winning competitive culture from Thunder, it's very exciting. And also working with Karen Gregg and also Tracy Neville, that's really a good defensive coach. So I think that I can implement into my own netball as well. And even if I go back to South Africa, you can give back as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we're really excited to see you back in the Super League. We've been really, really looking forward to it as well. It must have been a challenge being, particularly when you were in Australia, being so far away from home and having to adjust to a new culture and build a new social group. When we spoke with Sam Bird, I think it was before Christmas, she mentioned that imports at London Pulse in the 2021 season had really struggled, particularly with the additional pressures of COVID. So what do you think that the franchises can do to support their overseas players throughout the duration of their contract?
I think it's just like managing time as well, making sure also they check in, and if you need anything help, you should feel like it's a safe place. For me as an athlete, I'm allowed to maybe open up a bit more and get a connection with some of the teammates so that they are there for mentally support as well. Because for any import, it's quite difficult because now you have to get used to a different culture, environment, structure. So as a player, I've learned to be a lot adaptable, and especially with COVID the past years, we even got that learnings as well. But it's just about like having a healthy balance as well, and looking after yourself as well. You don't need to always depend on other people to make sure if you're okay, but it's really important to take me time. And that's what I've learned as well, like just to make sure to check in with myself. And also being away from home, it's important for me as a player or a daughter to check in with my family as well and stuff like that, to make sure from your side as well you do make time for family back home.
Yeah, it's so incredibly important. I mean, I can't imagine how tough it must be to be that far away from home, especially when you've got a time difference, for example, in Australia as well, can just add that extra layer of difficulty. And then you put on that, a busy schedule, training every day, all of that stuff. It's really challenging.
Yeah, definitely. But I must say, like staying in the UK with the time difference, it helps a lot. It's not day and night difference. So I must say that the time difference is a bit less this side. It helps a lot.
And we've seen with the likes of Kawanga at Surrey Storm, she was actually the first and currently the only import from her nation in the league. So that must come with even more additional difficulties. So how important is it for you to have some of your South African teammates also playing in the UK as well?
Definitely, I think it's a bonus point for us, especially gaining this exposure and gaining a lot of experience internationally, because back home we do have a local league, but it's not that competitive. I mean, you play for a club and the league continues for about 6 to 8 weeks and that's it. And where even as a player, you need that game time to gain experience and to put it into your core time as well. So I think it's very important, and I'm glad a lot of South Africans has actually signed in the Vitality League, especially to get game time, and it's very important heading into Com Games and World Cup next year.
Yeah, I think actually, Luce, correct me if I'm wrong, I think South Africa in this year of the league is actually the most imports for one country. I think we've got 6 in total this year, which is just incredible. And then obviously you think of the likes of Carla Pretorius, obviously on maternity leave now, but over in Australia as well. And having Pumza back is great. So yeah, I think it's really exciting times for South Africa for sure. In the Super League, compared to other leagues, we have quite a lot of specific rules around import players in comparison to somewhere like the SSN, where the number of imports are unlimited. So from a player perspective, having played in both of those leagues, what are your thoughts on the limit of having 2 imports in the Super League?
Well, it can go like 50-50, or your head can go to this side or that side. But I think in SSN, because it's like the best league in the world, is because they have a lot of imports, and it gives opportunity to international players, especially like, for instance, the Jamaicans. I mean, I think they're also like one of the most signed players in SSN, and back home they don't have the luxury of having a strong league, so that's where they gain experience as well. And I think a lot of like even players that started in the Vitality League is ending up in SSN, and it's good exposure for Jamaica as well. But then you get where people would be negative about that, is saying maybe, for instance, Australia as a whole team is struggling because they are giving too many imports opportunity to play, where that's like it can go either way. But I think for us as players, like you just want to play abroad and play netball because we love it, so where SSN, I think it's still great that they don't have a limit on imports. It gives much more players the opportunity to play abroad, because a lot of countries don't have that luxury as what it is in Australia, New Zealand and England. And even though, like, yes, we do have a import rule here in England where there's only 2 players allowed, and not even allowed in the same third, which make it tricky, but it also exciting, because then you have to it forces them as well to make local players better, and that's a good thing for England.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting what you were saying about not playing in the same third. And what we've noticed a lot is that you tend to get imports in the UK at either the shooting end or the defensive end. And you're sort of quite an unusual case because you're in the middle there. I think there's only 3 or 4 of the total imports this year who play in the midcourt. Do you think it's more difficult to get signed in that position?
I think in general, if you look at a game and player of the match would be announced, it's usually a shooter or a defender, because it's just so easy to shine a little bit better, like higher than some of the players, because a midcourt player, yes, you do a lot of hard work and you don't always get recognized for that, which is a shame a little bit. But yes, I think getting signed in the midcourt, you have to have that extra element or that extra flair to be seen.
Definitely. And so on a more positive note, we've seen how being an import in the VNSL can really skyrocket your career and experience, particularly when you're going back to play for your country, as you've mentioned. Shadine, how do you think that this has contributed to the success of South Africa in recent years?
Definitely a high success for us. And I mean, even when we had Norma Plummer with us, she learned us she got that exposure of us like playing abroad more than it was before she was with us. And I think that was a bit of a door opening for some of the players getting signed abroad, because you do have your key players in the South African team and they will always get recognized. But I think more and more there's more players getting recognition from teams like in England, even in New Zealand and in Australia. So that's good for us. And I mean, we are in the top 5 position in world rankings, and that's a positive for us. And we do still trying to break through to get to the top 4, but we're not there yet. But I think just having more and more players playing abroad, it just gives us the more experience and more potential for South Africa to be able to play with that competitiveness on court and make sure like you feel, because back home it's not the same way. Here you'll feel like, okay, every week or every weekend's game, it feels like a bit of an international game, which is good.
Definitely. And obviously we're really excited for the Super League kickoff this weekend. So how are you feeling about it? What's the vibe at Thunder? Are you going for another trophy?
Yes, but I say you don't want to be too excited about it. I say always you have to focus on the process to get the end result. And I think really our team is very excited this year, and we have a good vibe going around, and I think it's really good for a team to have that dynamic. And just heading into this weekend's game, I think we're going to really focus on ourselves before like focusing too much on other teams, so that we can build from there each week. And we'll take it there like each week, and then we'll see the process, and hopefully we can lift that trophy again this year.
Brilliant. Amazing. Thank you so much, Shadine. Great to chat to you today.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
Really interesting listening to Shadine there. I mean, she must have had such a varied experience being in Australia and then coming back over to the UK. It sounds like Thunder are really supporting her in that transition. And I mean, what struck me throughout the whole of this episode is just how difficult it is and all these hidden challenges that we don't realize. And then every player has to come out on court and still perform their best under that intense pressure of financial worries, missing their family, mental health struggles, everything like that. They've just got to put that all to one side. Really shows a very admirable level of resilience from those import players particularly.
Yeah, 100%. When I think about, my own life, and if I've got, something stressful going on in or out of work, like I struggle to get out of bed some days, let alone to, perform on the highest level week in,
under
week
such
out.
Scrutiny as well.
Yeah. And I think we're making great strides with our league, but it does strike me the disparity between the Super League and SSN. There is still so far to go. But I do think it's important to reflect on the progress that we've made and all of the good stuff, but it does get a little bit overwhelming or a bit depressing at times when you think of still how far we've got to go.
Exactly, particularly in comparison to men's sports and those enormous wages where they can be paid a really comfortable wage, more than comfortable in some instances.
Yeah.
And we're expecting our girls to put out that same level of elite performance and not providing them with that support. But it's a really wide-ranging issue, and England Netball have done so much to professionalize the game, and I think we have come so far from where we were, a few years ago, or when the Super League started even, and at least we have the goal in sight. And I really liked what Sarah was saying about everyone wants the game to move forward, but everyone just has maybe a slightly different idea of how we're going to get there. But that's what we need. We need different ideas and perspectives, and to try things, and most of all, to support the players, and particularly those players who bring so much to the league from their different nations. I think we have 9 nations represented in the Super League, which is brilliant. And I think even more can be done to celebrate those different players who are coming from all around the world to play netball here. What an amazing opportunity.
Yeah, and just the richness, the cultural richness that it brings to our league as well is absolutely phenomenal. And it's great to hear, from today's episode, but also previously when we were talking to Danny Titmus-Morris, for example, about how she's supporting Shaquanda Green Knoll, how supportive clubs are trying to be to help them settle into a new environment and new surroundings and new social groups. That's really great.
Yeah, and even though the clubs might not have the finances to put towards these players, they do have the love, I guess, and the passion, the comfort, and the desire to make them feel welcome and at home, which, in some ways can outstrip any amount of money, although a bit of money would be probably quite nice.
Yeah, so if you're a philanthropist listening to this, you want to donate some money to our league, then get in touch, we'll hook you up.
Great plug there, Luce. Nice one. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Qtr Time. We can't wait to bring you even more netball chat and a wrap up of the VNSL 2022 season opener next week with a super, super special guest.
Yeah, man, I'm excited for this one. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and follow us on social media at Qtr Time Pod for the latest netball updates. Do get involved in the conversation online by letting us know what you thought of the matches this weekend and which players have stood out for you.
We would also really appreciate it if you could take a moment to rate and review, as it helps other people to find the podcast. If you enjoy listening to the podcast, please do let us know, and do spread the word with your netball pals so even more people can get involved. Don't forget to check out our partners Carbon Jacked and take advantage of the exclusive Netball Pod 30% discount on their memberships. Take care, everyone, and see you soon. Bye.
Bye.